Capaccio, Sal Capaccio, Sal Capaccio, Sal Capaccio, Sal Capaccio on WGR.
Okay, I know for many years
Watching the Sabres, right? When you're listening to the game, you don't want to hear, look at that, right? Because the game is on the radio and you're a radio listener. But I'm prefacing this with that because I know if you're listening to the radio, which is sort of the deal usually when you pay attention to our show, today we're streaming on Facebook Live again with the draft tonight. Look, if you're watching us on Facebook Live, at Joe's hat.
What is going on? I'm leaning forward trying to, because I've got this on my iPhone, so the squares aren't real big. I like to have my iPad to look up, I don't know if it comes up Aaron Rodgers' career stats, for example, if he gets traded.
Just hypothetically.
Yeah, hypothetically, right. Is that a giant taco?
That is a giant taco on my head right now.
Wow. You got a different set of stuff from Taco Bell, our generous sponsor today. I got a nice water bottle and a hat and a gift card, so I'm thankful for that.
Got some foam fingers. That
hat is. Oh yeah, the foam. I got a foam finger over here too. Yeah.
Look at that. Look at Sal. Come on.
I'm trying to figure out if we got everything on here. We got the cheese. We got the green is the lettuce. I don't see any red. That would be tomato.
Red. No, there's a little red up there.
Oh, I see it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Sal, come on. You don't have a hat like that you could put on?
No, I don't have a hat like that. I have one like Bulldog, though. It's sitting on my shelf over here, the Taco Bell hat, the TB. It looks like thought it was like a Tampa Bay Rays hat for a minute. You know what I mean? Because it's
right.
It's not truly orange, but it's not their colors, but it kind of looked like that when I first looked at it.
Right, or a Tom Brady logo.
Something like come for the draft talk, stay for a look at Joe's hat.
The silly hats. Yeah.
Yes. Well, to elaborate on that, your local Taco Bell and KFC hiring for all positions in the Buffalo area. Great careers available for team member and management positions. Be part of a dynamic brand offering competitive pay and a flexible work schedule. Stop in today and ask for an application or apply online at tbjobs.bbgnorth.com or kfcjobs.bbgnorth.com or simply text BBG-TB to 85,000 for Taco Bell applicants and text BBG-KFC to 85,000 for KFC applicants. Message and data rates may apply. Start with us, stay with us. The draft is tonight, and Sal, Aaron Rodgers sounds like maybe once out of Green Bay. Not a bad little appetizer for draft night.
Not at all. And even on the heels of the report that you guys were talking about earlier, which is, that the 49ers, however, they were engaged in some sort of talk or conversation or offer for the number 3 pick. And obviously, the Packers wouldn't slide in there and take a quarterback. They have Jordan Love. They'd slide in there and take what? Kyle Pitts, to put on their offense, a wide receiver, whatever it is. That would be interesting. But man, this is a doozy. It's just, this league never stops. And no matter what happens, there always seems to be some sort of drama. And it's great. It's great for us as fans. I think it's great for the league in general. And tonight is the night. Tonight is Christmas and birthday and everything all rolled up into one. To have this drop, have this, Schefter bomb, so to speak, drop on our laps tonight of all nights is pretty incredible.
Sal, my first thought when hearing, even before the Schefter report earlier, around 3:15 or so, this morning that the 49ers had contacted Green Bay yesterday about the availability of Rodgers. My first thought was, too bad you just traded away your next 2 years' first-round picks, because despite having number 3 overall, I can't imagine that's enough, really, really high leverage capital to get Aaron Rodgers out of Green Bay, despite his being 36 years old. Like, am I misreading that? Like, is 3 a good, at least, starting point? But without future number 1s, I just don't see how Green Bay would make that deal.
I agree with you. The initial report suggested, and I haven't seen anything since, you can correct me if this happened, but players off their roster. Are you going to cripple your own roster by bringing Aaron Rodgers in and basically saying we're not even going to give him the help because we're going to get people off our roster to make this trade happen? I mean, if you're going to make the trade, you're going to want to make sure he's going to a situation. The reason you trade for Aaron Rodgers is because you think he can get you a Super Bowl, before his career is over. So you don't have the draft capital necessarily to make what would normally be the offer for this trade. Yeah, I don't know how you do it without ones. So I think that's why, Bulldog. That's why they have to give players off their roster because they don't have other picks. But those better be good players. And if you're getting rid of those players, how are you going to win?
I think if I'm San Francisco, I don't even bother with this idea. It sounds like they have bothered with this idea already, but this is an exciting time for a team like that. And unlike the Jets and the Jaguars also picking at the top tonight, San Francisco was in a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo and this coach 2 years ago. Like, they can go with a lot of different guys. It's how people talk about Shanahan. He doesn't really matter that much. It's an exciting time like it was for the Bills 3 years ago. We didn't know at this time that day who it would be, but we knew it would be one of them. And you start a new era like that. I mean, I think that's cool for San Francisco. Bulldog likes Carolina in a Rodgers idea, and that's different. I mean, they have good offensive minds there. They have plenty of good talent. They're not short. That's different than the 49ers for me, and maybe that's a team where it'd be easier to make such a trade because of the point about the draft picks.
I like that. I mean, they did just trade for Darnold, but we know. I mean, even in my mock that I put out this morning, I still had Carolina taking a quarterback. I believe everything I've read and seen, if Justin Fields is there, I think they will take him, and at least are very tempted to, and then they'll kind of sort it out with Darnold. The team I wonder about now. The other part of this is, before I say it, we don't know what Rodgers, let's say they do, okay, you know what? We're going to trade him. Does he have a say, like, where he goes? Is there anything in contract language? Can he just say, oh, I'm going to pick it, or I'm going to make it difficult on you to trade me somewhere? Because I think Denver could be a landing spot. Even after trading for Bridgewater, fine, we have Teddy Bridgewater, so what? Like, they would trade for Aaron Rodgers, and I think suddenly you're in a division with Mahomes and Justin Herbert. Give me Aaron Rodgers, right? I mean, I think that could work as well. I just don't know what, Rodgers' thoughts on all of this would be. How much say he even has in any of it.
Right.
Yeah, I like the Denver idea too. Well, a lot of excitement on this front and also the top of the draft, the Niners thing. Every day has been good drama. Then the Bills at 30. Let's get to the Bills here, Sal. We've got a couple hours, a few hours here anyway, and then a few hours more of the draft before it'll be pick 30. They could move up. And they've done that several times in the last few years under Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott. What do you consider, not necessarily in terms of a number, but the odds of that being tonight, given everything, given what positions they might want to address the most and the other teams around them? What kind of chances would you give the Bills trading up?
I'd say good chances. If you want to say like maybe 40, 50%, I think to get as high as what was suggested by Todd McShay would be less. So that's hard. That's hard to move up 10 spots. I mean, you could do it. The Chiefs did it with the Bills several years ago into the top 10, right? We're hearing about the Saints wanting to do it. So, I mean, it's not impossible to go 8, 9 spots up from 30. I just think that, that's a pretty hefty move. If you want to go 4 or 5 spots up, I think it's possible. I do not discount the Bills trading up. The more I looked at it, the more I did my mock draft, and I put it out there. Last night I was working on it late, and I kept watching the board fall. And I kept thinking to myself, boy, like once you get to a certain spot and it's right around there, it really is a drop off. And, you guys know, I've said this many times, this. There are never 32 first round picks in this league. Graded out. Teams will never have 32 first round grades, ever. Normally it's between 18 to 22. Like that's high. 22, 23 would be on the high end. I read, I can't remember where this year, like a GM had said to a scout or something, I think it was a piece at ESPN.com about building a board, that one team had only 16 guys with first-round grades. So we're talking like if you really want to maximize your value and get a guy that's going to walk on your team that you think is worthy, if you're Brandon Beane, you almost have to get up to that spot. So I don't discount it. I think the Bills will try to do that. I'm not saying they're going to push for it. I think they'll make the calls to see, what it costs and look at who's on the board and be willing if that's the case.
I think this will be a very interesting draft, maybe the most interesting in a long time, to really watch for that sort of thing, Sal, trades, because, of course, we know teams all have their own boards, right? There's no universal agreement on rating these players. And with the uncertainty because of guys who just didn't play at all or played a limited schedule, the limited health reports, like there's just a lot of uncertainty, and that's been widely reported and discussed that this year teams are, it's more of a wild, unknown sort of situation. So once this thing starts and you get, past whatever feels certain, and like we're not even certain about number 3 right now, right?
Right.
But once you get into the wilds of the draft, there could be a lot of variance there. Like lots of teams could have a guy, rated very highly that a bunch of teams don't, and you can just see teams move maybe dramatically to try to get a guy that they sense value in that the teams that are in those spots don't.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, on top of that, like you look at the medical situation, it's not just the value of the player, right? And I know this is part of what you're talking about, but we heard so many GMs like Brandon Beane and other people in this league talk about how you just can't get the right medicals on a lot of these guys. So right. What do you do with that? Where does he go on your board? How do you figure that out? So all of a sudden, a player that one team might have 10th, another team might have completely off their board. Or, we'll take a chance. We can't take a chance on here. Whereas another team may be way more secure in his medical situation, right? I think that's the case with the guy I mocked to the Bills, Jalen Phillips. But, Caleb Farley, I think, is the poster child for this.
Yep,
the guy had back
surgery.
surgery.
Say his name. Yep.
Yeah, what do you do with that? How do you know what he's going to be able to do or not do, especially knowing that you might have another virtual offseason? You can't even get him in your building to find out.
Sal Capaccio with us, Mike Schopp and the Bulldogs, Sneaky Joe here on WGR and on screen, on camera at the WGR Facebook page, Facebook Live, brought to you by Taco Bell today. Sal, top 3 names. You're in a pool for tonight, and it's tough or tougher with the pick at the bottom of the first round, of course. Top 3 names that you would first expect the Bills to pick, as best as you can do.
And this is whether they trade or stay or whatever, just 3 names?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
In no particular order, I would say Jalen Phillips, Greg Newsome, and Travis Etienne.
Okay. And so edge rushers, like, I think I have this right. I spend more of my time than edge talking about or thinking about corner, and then way more than that thinking about running back because that's so much fun to talk about. So people are so entrenched on that, and as am I. What is the talent pool like when it comes to that position?
Not as good as it normally is. There's a few guys at the top, Phillips, Ojulari, Kwity Paye. I think those are considered mostly by most to be the top 3 guys. There's still some variance in them, especially Phillips. Ojulari, some teams might just see him as a scheme fit. I think he can play anywhere. He's pretty versatile. It is not a great pass rusher edge draft. We've seen a lot of those come by lately. We've seen some drafts where there's some good edge rushers, there's some good pass rushers. To me, once you get past those 3, you might want to wait a little while. I'm sure there's guys that you can take, but there's a pretty big drop off, I think, from 3 to the rest of the group, and it's not an overall great class for it.
Yeah, right. The very fact that you're doing a mock draft where one of those 3 falls to the Bills at 30, I think says a lot about the caliber of the prospects. And again, that doesn't have to be right. We just talked about what an uncertain year it is, and it's the draft, which is uncertain to begin with. So you're heaping uncertainty on top of something that's already uncertain. So it probably is more challenging than normal, but I've talked with you many times, and I think I said it just earlier today already. Like I'm a little nervous. I recognize the need. I've been saying they need an edge guy for 2 or 3 drafts in a row now. Mm-hmm. But I'd be worried about thinking I'm getting someone at least that's going to help me in any substantive way right away at 30. And I might even say even moving up, I'd be a little leery of because. I'm not real confident. It feels a little bit like edge rusher. I might be treating it too much like quarterback, right? The best ones go early. I feel like edge is close to that kind of status. Like if you've got the skill set there, the lean, the length, the whatever, the burst, and all that stuff, you go in the front half of the first round. You don't sit on the board until 30 unless there's real questions about your ability to transition to the next level.
That's right. And I'd say this, Bulldog, of all the mocks that I've done, I've been a part of around the country, I read and all those kinds of things, no edge rusher goes in the top 10, like ever in
right.
this draft. As much as you like Phillips or Paye or Ojulari, like they're not going in the top 10. There's just too many quarterbacks going. There's 2 corners that go. There's offensive linemen that are there, and there's linebackers. And there's just players at other positions. So it doesn't mean those guys aren't good. But it just goes to show you don't have a Myles Garrett, right, in this draft. You don't have guys you don't have a Bosa in this draft. But I would say this about the edge rushers. I think it's generally 2 tiers where you'd find them. It's the top 3, Phillips, Ojulari, and Pay in whatever order. And the next tier is Rousseau, Tryon, and Owe. But any one of them, you can kind of move up and down your tier however you want to do it. But a lot of that's based on A, medical, and B, production of what have we seen, what have we not seen. We got to go off pro days. In the case of Owe, I mean, the guy had this incredible pro day and no production basically last year at Penn State, but people love him. So I think basically those are the 6. I divide them into 3 and then 3. You might get 4 in the first round. You probably will get 3 in the first round, and then we'll see what happens after that.
You mentioned ETN in your top 3. That's a big one to watch here tonight. And so I think, we had Bulldog this whole process talk about singling him out as a player, something I would not want to do because of just year after year in the draft, how faulty that can seem to be. But he does offer a unique set of qualities with an outstanding college player, all the rest of it. And Brandon Beane talked about not having a running back he'd call a home run hitter. And this would be that. So I know you've thought about it a lot. As we've talked about it a lot, ETN makes your top 3. What about his availability at 30? I know we had the Todd McShay thing too, and you've mentioned that already. Is he a player you think the Bills would move up for?
No. And as much as I put him in that 3, it's just I can't get off the idea that maybe they would do it. But I could be easily talked out of it. Like I'm more on I don't think they're going to draft a running back in the first round, whether that's staying at 30 or moving up. I just don't think so, but I just can't discount that possibility for every reason you said, Mike, which is what Brandon Beane has said, thinking about the way, the home run hitter, and it's just, just a lot of dots are connecting. I don't just want to pull myself completely out of there, so I'm going to keep him alive. However, I do this mock draft, he's gone. I get Najee Harris going to 18 to Miami. That's a kind of a surprise pick for many, but I think that's very, very possible. And then you get to Pittsburgh, who takes ETN, who maybe people would think they'd take Harris. Now they get ETN at 24. That takes them both off the board. The other thing I'll say is I do think that the Bills do want to add to a running back. They want to get more of a playmaking home run type of ability. I don't think that means they have to do it in the first round. This is a good group of running backs in the second or third tier that I think maybe they can find another guy, kind of like they did the last couple of years with Singletary and Moss. I think it was Benjamin Albright who had reported he mocked ETN to the Bills. And he had said earlier in the week or 2 weeks ago, I know the Bills have done a lot of homework on running backs. I don't think that should necessarily mean they're going to take one in the first round. I think what that means is, hey, we want to find one. Let's get the right guy at the right value.
Right. For me, it's all about the guy better be that home run hitter. Otherwise, I'm not interested in draft. If they can't find their way to that guy or just don't like the idea, I'm not really interested in any other running back. Like I'll keep going forward with Moss and Singletary. I'll trust that Singletary did all this work in the offseason because I think ETN is kind of a unicorn in that way. Like he is that home run threat that can catch passes, and I don't think there's another guy. I hear a lot about Gainwell, and maybe that maybe that's something you can explore on day 2 of the draft. But really, for me, it's been ETN or bust.
And I do think the point needs to be made, what you just said, which is, like, it's not like they have a couple of stiffs at running back, right, with Singletary and Moss. I mean, you may think that they don't have an element that you want. You may want to upgrade a little bit at the top end there, but these are fine players to me. I think that, you can still win a lot of football. They won 15 games with these guys last year at running back, mostly throwing the football. They went to the AFC Championship game. Yes, you're in a position now where you're trying to get something, that one thing. What is that thing to get you over the hump, to get you over Kansas City, to get into the Super Bowl, to win a Lombardi Trophy? But this isn't a Miami Dolphins running back situation. This isn't a current Pittsburgh Steelers running back situation. This isn't a Jets running back situation where you're just wandering going, okay, what are we going to do? Who are we handing the ball off when our quarterback turns around? You have guys here who I think, they can play in the league, and they've done okay so far. And I know Moss is incomplete, but I think he looked fine last year in limited time, and I know he had the injury at the end of the year as well.
All right, Sal. I'd be surprised if Miami picked running back, but they do have those extra picks, and so when that happens, the Robin Leonard trade, when that happens, teams can, if you will, fool around a little bit. Maybe that'll happen, but I don't see Chris Greer as the type to make that pick. Maybe. I know that in terms of Pittsburgh and the whole league, in the beginning, or maybe not even that long ago, the odds on at least one running back picked in the first round were close to even money. Like It was it was minus money to bet yes, but it was fairly close. And now it's minus 700 to bet yes. Like, it is almost a given, I think, the way it's looked at now today, that there will be at least one running back pick. So Pittsburgh seems the most likely. You mentioned Miami, maybe the Bills. Even Washington has been rumored for that too, right? Right, Joe? With the guy with the taco on your head? Is that what you've heard?
Yeah.
Let me just say that the reason why I have Harris going to Miami at 18 is partly because of what you said, Mike. They have these picks like, hey, but I really believe this offseason has been about helping their young quarterback. They need to figure him out. They need to know. And they've upgraded at wide receiver, and I think they're going to upgrade again at wide receiver in this draft early. And I have them taking Jalen Waddle. They could go Smith, but they're going to get one of them or Pitts or whoever. And then I think, okay, now what else do we need? Oh, yeah, we need the running back. Now, their offensive line isn't set, but I think that's their mode of thinking, kind of like the Bills did when they needed to find out about Josh Allen. They needed to help him, and Brandon Beane came out and said, we're going to do everything we can to help this kid, and they did that. And on Pittsburgh, interesting today, a lot of the reporting about Pittsburgh is, yes, they want to fix the run game. Like, that's the primary focus, but does it have to be a running back, right? So it could be offensive line. They have issues there. So I wonder where they want to go, because I do think there's a possibility they don't go running back, but whatever they do, I think is going to be about the running game, and that could be offensive line.
Yes. If they don't have the line, they won't run the ball. Well, whoever the running back is, we know that. And if they throw the ball well, they won't care. They won't need to run the ball. So I don't know. Great subject.
I just want to throw in here real quick, because when Sal, brought up Pittsburgh and Miami, like, they are the teams that make more sense for me for first-round running backs because of what you said. Like, they don't really have other guys. And the Bills having other guys, to me, makes it all the more reason to go. If you want that open field space running back that's a home run hitter, that's when you draft Kenneth Gainwell. Because, to me, Gainwell is much more of a way better pass catcher than ETN is. And in the open field, I think they're comparable if Gainwell isn't better himself. So, to me, where ETN separates himself from that guy specifically is the rest of it. The well-rounded run game that I think I already have in Devin Singletary and Zach Moss. So, to me, I'm fading away hard from first-round running backs, and I don't want to eliminate a guy like Kenneth Gainwell because he might present that element to my offense just because I drafted running backs in the third round each of the last 2 years.
I think what you're talking about, Joe, is ETN is almost a replacement, whereas Gainwell would be an addition to, right? I mean, in a way, a supplement. And that's what you get later in the draft. So it's an interesting subject. I think the Jets also, by the way, guys, lots of people thinking the Jets could, grab one of these guys if they get their hands on them. And, they're a team that needs a running back.
And has 2 first-round picks.
Yep.
Joe, best point I've ever heard from a guy with a taco on his head. Absolutely outstanding.
Well, stay tuned.
Can one of us top it? That red pepper against the wall back here is actually a hat, but I can't get it out of my head.
First thing I'm going to have to do is come up with a good point. The second thing I'm going to have to do, which is going to be hard, second thing I have to do, find a taco hat.
Or a taco.
1 good point, 2 taco hat. That's it. It's a short list.
Yep.
Sal, thank you. We'll talk again later.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Sal Capaccio will rejoin us, at 6. Go ahead.
Right. Sale on our Wester hotline there, as always, is brought to you by New York's only outlet liquor. When you need to stock up, it's the place to buy a case. What's your outlet?
So much scuttlebutt on Aaron Rodgers right now. We'll try to sum it all up here. What is going to happen there? The Bills pick your best and worst case scenarios or just one or the other? Feel free to let us know. 803-0550. If you're on, we can't get a camera to you in time to have you join us on the Facebook Live, but you'll be on the air like the usual way.
Right.
So
even if you have a taco hat.
With or without a taco hat.
Right.
That's right. Thanks for being with us. The draft is tonight. We're excited. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here, WGR.
You're listening to Schopp and the Bulldog live.
Liquor. When you need to stock up, it's the place to buy a case. And by Fiegel Car and Joyce, your border attorneys.
This is the way he's run his entire life. Basically, Devin Singletary, when Nick Hicks, his trainer, kind of studied his film and really broke it down to a science. The way he said is just way too much dancing. I think that was the number one problem is he'd almost kind of juke himself out of the frame, lose that ability to just plant and go and get upfield. And that's a great thing to have. I mean, you want to be evasive and you want to leave defenders in the dust. You think back to that run against Pittsburgh. I mean, that comes to mind. There were so many plays where he just had that highlight reel juke, but when it kind of takes it to that extreme, it can be counterproductive.
Tyler Dunn yesterday, golongtd.com. Whenever there's a Aaron Rodgers story, I think of Tyler, who wrote, a not quite damning piece about Rodgers, just an incredibly insightful and really a lot of new information about Rodgers and Mike McCarthy, then the Packers coach, and all the different dynamics. It's around the same time that I was watching Rodgers' brother, Jordan Rodgers, on The Bachelor, and it came out that Aaron Rodgers had no interaction with his family anymore. He was just no part of the scene at all. And that was no accident. So Rodgers is just what a player, what a career, won Super Bowl at least, never been back to a second one, been close a lot. But there's just a lot of personality. There's a lot of drama with Rodgers, for right or wrong, whether that's on him or not. There just is. And so now we're at a point where it sounds like he's done with the Packers. And I mean, Bulldog, in the last hour plus, there has been just all the big reporter guys are taking their, they're working their angles, and they're all seemingly now in the know on this.
Right.
And that Rodgers, I read Rodgers he has the 49ers, Broncos, and Raiders on a list. I've read that the Packers told him they would try to trade him, and that now he feels like he just feels left out. There's the contract extension part. There's just a lot that's just all out in the last hour and a half.
Yeah, I saw they don't want to trade him in the conference, so that's where the Raiders and the Broncos, I think, come up as fits. That it hurts Carolina's chances, you would think, and probably San Francisco's too. Although right from the start, I've not. Despite that's sort of where the Aaron Rodgers news cycle today started this morning, with news that the 49ers were talking to the Packers, and I just don't think they have the draft capital to pull it off. I could be wrong. Sal was on with us talking about maybe roster players to make up the gap. I mean, maybe. If I'm the Packers, I wouldn't want that. I think I would prefer future assets. I've got a young quarterback waiting in the wings that didn't even win the backup job, like you said a few times today. So maybe the timing probably isn't great for Green Bay. But if they're being pushed into a spot where Rodgers is threatening to just not play if he doesn't get his way, then you'd think if you're them coming off an MVP season, if you think it's going to happen with Rodgers, if it's going to end with him leaving you eventually, it's never going to be. I mean, unless they win the Super Bowl next year, there's never going to be a better time to do it. I mean, he was the MVP of the league after a couple of years that weren't really up to par. So if I'm them, if I'm in charge of them, or I'm talking about them, in Green Bay, I think now's the time. As much as you don't want to do it, as much as you might want to say something like, well, I can just deny you. You're right. I mean, you're my player. You have a contract, and if you're going to play, play here. And if the player is going to say, okay, then I just won't play. If you're Green Bay, you got to act, I think, which is why I'm taking it seriously, and I'm sort of expecting something to happen on this front. There's a lot of fire suddenly, where this morning there was just smoke. It was San Francisco calling Green Bay. Okay, well, good luck with that, San Francisco, is what I said when I saw that. And then, in the last hour and a half or so, we've got, like you're saying, everybody's taking turns. Jay Glazer is saying it's about way more than contract. It's not just him leveraging, looking for, $50 million a year or something. And Schefter's piling on top of that with Jay knows what's up, basically. So it sounds pretty serious to me. I'm Mr. Smokescreen, right? That's me. I don't believe any of this stuff. This I am believing. This seems authentic to me.
Yeah, it just becomes fairly suddenly a chorus of items and facts about what has happened between Rodgers and the team. I can't tell you if he has any sort of no trade clause. I'm on Spot Track and I don't see anything. There's the regular salary information and dead cap and all of that, but I don't see anything. But I don't know either where that would be on this page if there were one. You just kind of assume that a player of his stature would have control, but I'm not sure at this point whether that's true. Well, he's 37 even, and I think I will just try this. I mean, I think there's an argument for a team like San Francisco or even Carolina choosing to not bother with this, but maybe not a great argument. I feel like San Francisco is in a great place they traded a lot to get from 12 to 3. It sounds today that they're on Trey Lance and not Mac Jones. Lance or Fields, like most people, I think that seems like a much better idea. Tons of physical talent on a team with a coach that has been great at getting the most out of quarterback talent. So that's a really exciting time for that franchise. Would they, I guess maybe it's yes. Would they prefer Rodgers at 37 to the lottery ticket that is these rookies?
I think there's certainly an argument to be made for doing it even at his advanced age. I was looking at something earlier in the day today regarding I think it was Mike Clay put out a list of all the first round quarterbacks from 2010. You can see we're streaming on Facebook Live, so I'm gesturing like I'm looking at a board now. All the first round quarterbacks since 2010, and I think there were 34 of them. I made some notes. Yeah, 34 of them. That's a long time ago now. I mean, it's 11 years ago. Only 11 of them are still with the team that drafted them, and you only go back to 17 to start that list. So what that means is that there's the hit rate is not great. So as highly touted as Trey Lance and even Trevor Lawrence and everybody else is this year, these guys that have been drafted in those spots over the years, very few of them are sticking around for second contracts. And we even saw this year 2 guys that did get second contracts got booted out early in those second contracts, Goff and Wentz. So I'm going a long way here to say it's far from certain. Like if you're San Francisco and you think you are a quarterback away from winning the Super Bowl, and you got there with Jimmy Garoppolo, and maybe in large part you didn't win that game because of the flaws of that quarterback. Do you want to – I recognize how exciting it is, and the Bills hit on their guy and Baltimore hit on their guy, but the bird in the hand of knowing you're getting someone who is playing at an MVP level, which is what Rodgers was last year, even though it's a short-term solution, I mean, the banners fly forever. So go win your Super Bowl, and you worry about getting your future franchise quarterback the next time around.
They do fly forever. Don't follow up with me on this. Don't ask me what I mean, but Shanahan's been to more Super Bowls than Rodgers. I sort of like the moment for San Francisco, but he's an all-time great. You saw that today. I saw this. Number of skill position players the Packers have drafted in round 1 since Rodgers became their starter in 2008. 1. Love. They've never drafted a receiver in the first round with Rodgers as the quarterback.
There is no question to me that you can make a very strong case that they have not done. Certainly, by the way, you hear it all the time. The Bills got Josh Allen. They loaded up on guys to help Josh Allen. The Eagles did that. The Bears did that. I mean, it didn't work, but it's something you want to do is, help the guy that you just invested in. And, in those cases with players that young, it's to see if the guy's any good before you have to commit to him. With a guy like Rodgers, I mean, maybe you feel like you can do whatever you want because he'll make he'll make whatever I put out there on the field productive because he's so great. But all the same, like I would totally understand as much of a diva as Rodgers may come off as, and some of that I think is probably warranted. I think it's pretty easy. I would say I agree with any argument that the Packers have not, quote unquote, done right by him. Because if you've got a player of that caliber, I just think you owe it to him to get him high caliber teammates to like just push that thing over the edge. And they just have done, I mean, you just said it. They've done really the opposite of that. They've not done much of that at all. They stumbled onto Devontae Adams. I mean, he's great, but they keep trying to repeat that trick instead of, drafting guys that can help Rodgers, are more likely to pan out and help Rodgers is all I mean to say.
Round one of the draft is tonight. Want to thank our sponsor, Taco Bell, for their support. We do have a Taco Bell draft trivia contest. How about right now? We'll play tomorrow, too, and in the mornings. Here is our trivia question coming up. We are looking for the first correct answer at 644-9878. And the winner receives a $25 gift card from Taco Bell. Who is the last offensive lineman the Bills drafted in the first round? Who is the last offensive lineman the Bills drafted in the first round? 644-9878. First correct answer wins. We'll give you the answer next and talk more about round one, this Aaron Rodgers story as well. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog, WGR.
You're listening to Schopp and the Bulldog.
Our brand matters. By Outlet Liquor. When you need to stock up, it's the place to buy a case. And by Fiegel Car and Joyce, your border attorneys.
I've kind of broken this up into two layers. If the Bills feel like they want more size and like pure athleticism opposite Tre'Davious White, then there are a bunch. I mean, beyond Fatu Melifonwu from Syracuse, who I agree is probably going to go in round 2. There's Eric Stokes from Georgia, who had one of those ridiculous pro days, ran in the 4.2s, low 4.3s, very long man and zone production at Georgia, big school in the SEC. Even his teammate, Tyson Campbell, I don't think would be a terrible selection because he's above 6 foot. He's got 32-inch arms, would just give the Bills that size element.
That is Chris Trapasso on our show earlier in the week from CBS. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here with Sneaky Joe, who has a taco hat.
It's back here now.
Taking a break. Bothering his neck a little bit, he says.
Well, you don't want to wear it out.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Sitting a little differently because it goes way back. So you can't really sit straight up in the chair, I guess, unless I crush it. But
you know who else goes way back? The guy who got the trivia question right.
Yes.
Because it's not recent. Eric Wood is the last offensive lineman the Bills drafted in the first round. One of 2 picks they had that year, 2009. Aaron Mabin the other. Before that were to Mike Williams.
Yeah, that was the guy I thought of. I forgot about Eric, which is weird. I mean, we work with him.
Yeah.
I should have thought of Eric Wood. But, yeah, Mike Williams. Reuben Brown was before that.
That's right.
If there's anybody between Reuben and Mike Williams? No?
Nope.
Okay.
Those are the last 3 offensive linemen drafted by the Bills in the first round. Reuben Brown, Mike Williams, Eric Wood.
94 is Reuben?
95.
95, thank you.
Yep. Pretty good.
Yep. Have you seen the Trey Wingo tweet from about a half an hour ago? It's made the rounds. Everyone's taking turns retweeting it. If our audience hasn't, here's Trey Wingo. He'll be hosting the draft on ESPN tonight, I believe. Sources: Packers reportedly told Rodgers they were going to trade him in the offseason, then backed off. It's been a bleep show between them ever since, and within the last week, Rodgers told the team, trade or no trade, I'm not coming back. Buckle up, folks.
Buckle up. I love that.
Buckle up. That
he's not with ESPN anymore. Maybe he's, that he's hosting, but he's not with ESPN anymore.
No, you're right. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, I don't know where. Yeah, that's right. He left. All right, my apologies on that. I wrongly identified him. He had been that guy for them for a long time.
Here's a leap from me. All these guys just hammering out inside source stuff on Rodgers in the last 2 hours. Rodgers is their source. Isn't Rodgers a guy who's everybody on that level has his number?
I'd say yes.
You know, like he's sort of a social guy that, sure, he works the media. I would think that about him. So I bet that he's the source, that he thought he would be traded. His feelings about people in the organization. Like nobody's denying any of this. So I don't know. It doesn't matter, I guess, because we're kind of generally at least trusting these reports.
It again, though, is crazy how strong the reports are.
Yeah.
And how they all came this close to the NFL draft.
They're all today.
That is what leads me to believe it absolutely is coming from Rodgers.
Right. What do you want to know? Do I want to leave? Yeah. Where would I go? San Francisco. Maybe this sort of adds up, I think, that Rodgers helped facilitate San Francisco or just like
Well, there's another report that he wants Green Bay to take San Francisco's offer. So
then they don't.
And now he's like,
he's like, all right, well, I'm not playing.
Coming out.
Everything's coming out. This is how it happens.
Wingo, by the way, is going to lead Fox Sports' coverage of the draft. I don't know if he's with Fox Sports, but he's at least doing it with them today.
All right. Thank you, Joe.
Is there anybody who is not covering the draft? I do not know how I want to consume this tonight. We've got the Sabres tonight, and Joe will be on after, which is great. But a friend of mine just texted me during the break, what are you hoping for tonight? Or not hoping for? Like, what would be the worst thing for? And my answer, I'll give it to you. My honest answer is I do not want Travis Etienne on Washington. That's what I want.
Oh.
Like my one nightmare scenario for tonight is Travis Etienne on Washington.
I would be so mad. I
'Cause
wouldn't even care what the Bills do after that.
Completely loaded up on Antonio Gibson last year, and like I took off, and like why in the world would they draft Etienne? That's Etienne and the Bills. Great. People are still like three years later. Oh, you guys were so mad. By the way, about Allen, Bulldog especially, every single time it comes up, he's like, I wasn't.
No.
And I'm over here going, if it's something to talk about, I want it. The 11 years without an offensive lineman in the first round have been a dream. Because how can you talk about that? So, sure, Etienne and the Bills. Yeah, sure, great. We'll have a lot of fun talking about that. It's been a lot of fun talking about that. It hasn't even happened yet.
Right.
So, no, those things are not bad news for me. I want content. That's their role in my life, primarily at least, is something to talk about. So let's go. I don't want any. I'm saying corner. I think that's best for the team, but it's way more boring than a running back in the first round would be, right? And trade up for one. That's even hotter.
Yeah, sure. I don't need them to do that. I'd rather they don't do that. But yeah, I'm all about bring me Travis Etienne. Yeah, that's right.
The trade up is a disaster for me because that's like the one thing, Mike, you've said a lot that Bulldogs kind of countered is, will the Bills feel pressure to give the ball to Etienne if they draft him at 30? Because I think I would trust them enough to think, no, they'll still throw the ball a lot. They trade up 10 spots to go get this guy. And I am going to really believe that they're going to feel inherent pressure. Like, we moved up for this guy. We spent assets.
Let's make it work.
We're going to give him the football, and that I'm worried about.
I'm not sure. I think it's different, but it might be different whether you trade up or not. We'll talk about it some more. 803-0550 for us, Mike Schopp and the Bulldog with Sneaky Joe. Sal rejoins us at 6. We're also on Facebook Live today. You can watch us there. This is WGR.
You're listening to Schopp and the Bulldog.
do with crumpled up dollar bills. I would have crumbled them all up individually and left them in your spot.
Okay, I'm going to give you the $50 out here for the golf bet.
Oh my God.
Hold this.
50, I forgot all about it. $50?
Yeah.
Great. What are you doing?
Taking off my shoe. I got money in the shoe.
What?
And the Bulldog.
Used to do that with stuff at the pizza place. We used to just, in front of the guy, pull the 20 out of your wallet, put it under your shirt and rub your underarm with it and then give it to him.
There you go. Take the $50.
No, I don't want.
Take the $50.
I'd really rather not. I don't want that 50 from your sweaty,
the $50.
disgusting sock and sneaker.
This is the payoff.
I don't want that 50. Give me a clean 50.
This is the 50.
I'm not touching that 50. I don't want
the
it.
50. That's
No.
what they're not paying you.
What?
I'm not paying you.
You owe me $50. What
this is $50.
On WGR, Sports Radio 550.
All right, welcome to the draft, sort of. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog, Sneaky Joe. Sal Capaccio rejoins us again later. We're on Facebook Live today. It's brought to you by Taco Bell. Bulldog's got a purple foam finger. I've got one, too. Mine looks blue. That's the best I can do for a display here in the studio, is way back there against the window. Joe's got a fun hat. We're definitely in the Taco Bell spirit of things, the draft spirit. Round one to get going in 3 hours, and the Bills pick, if they stay at 30, might be more than 3 hours after that. Goes pretty late. We're not used to this, really. It's the latest they've ever picked. 30 in the first round. The draft is in Cleveland.
Is that because there were fewer teams in the league when they were going to the Super Bowl four times in a row, right? Okay.
That's right. They would have drafted 27th.
Eric Wood maybe could have been the answer to that trivia question, too. Would he have been the latest first-round pick they've had before? Because that was 28.
Ooh.
Tre'Davious White would have been 27. I can hunt for that if you want.
Thomas Smith was 28.
I feel like McCargo might have been 30-something.
Oh, McCargo.
McCargo. Draft memories. 26.
Okay.
Yeah, 28's the highest. Couple of guys before tonight if they stay at 30. The draft is in Cleveland. Have you turned on any coverage yet of Cleveland?
I'm not. No, I'm. I've got a device being used so that everybody can see my beautiful face here, along with you guys, and so I'm not streaming anything on my iPad. I don't have a regular TV hookup up here in the attic. Using the iPad to keep track of Twitter and whatever else is going on. So, no, I haven't turned on any of the coverage yet. Anything stand out?
Yes. They've got a big amphitheater. It's outside in that plaza near the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. 49 degrees, rain, winds between 20 and 30 miles per hour for that scene.
We would be freaking the bleep out if we were hosting the draft in Buffalo and we got that weather. It's pretty much the same here today, right?
Right,
yeah.
right.
If we had that, it's not a Chamber of Commerce kind of day. We'd be like, oh, come on.
Right. 75.
It was 80 a couple weeks ago.
75 on Sunday in Cleveland, but, so much, a lot of good that does them.
Right.
So can we talk about, the ETN idea, and when we were on before the last break, Joe said, because I've said, I just don't understand the logic of drafting him and then really not really using him. That's what you want. You want this piece to add to this record-breaking offense. Well, I owe something to that, I think. I think any team would sort of have that instinct. Would they all act on them in the same way? Of course not. But that would it's sort of a logical instinct. Well, we drafted this guy. What are we going to do? Why did we draft him if we're not going to use him? So then Joe said he kind of feels that would happen, if I'm not putting words in your mouth here, only if the Bills were to trade up for him. And that would be the sign that, okay, this is their running back now.
Yeah, you'd be more worried about it than you would be if they picked him at 30.
Yeah,
right,
and I said, I don't know if I agree with that, but I might. The earlier, it's sort of your thinking, too, with respect to picking a running back at all in the first round. It's it's late enough, which also, of course, means my team is good enough that I can afford it. Right. If it's earlier, it's a different equation.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think logically that makes some sense. You're paying more for this item, this player, so therefore your compulsion to make sure you get value out of it might be stronger. But I think you have to have that compulsion in the first place. And I am, and I might be making a mistake. I mean, I'm giving the Bills the benefit of the doubt that their eyes are and their minds are wide open to exactly what their meal ticket is, like what made them hum this year, unless they subscribe to some notion of it being a fluke that they threw the ball as often as they did and as effectively as they did, and they scored a record number of points for them and won 13 games and got all the way to the AFC Championship game playing that way. Maybe the playoffs gives them some pause because they didn't exactly hum on offense in any of the 3 playoff games. I mean, they had their moments, but really the biggest play of the playoffs was a 101-yard interception return by Taron Johnson. It wasn't some offensive fireworks by Josh Allen or Stephon Diggs. They had, they made some plays, but really that was the play that people are going to remember from the 3 playoff games, I think, is Taron Johnson's interception return against Baltimore. So, but all that said, I would be surprised if they looked at Travis Etienne and went, yeah, we need him because we want to run the ball more. Like, I think you want to be more effective when you run it and have more of a threat when you run it. To turn your back on after 1 year of success with Josh Allen throwing it as frequently as they did in the name of balance or something, I just think would be silly. I want to give them credit for, just general intelligence as well as obviously football intelligence to know where the league is at. I mean, we've bent over backwards crediting them for recognizing it and having Brian Daboll design this offense. I think if they're going to draft Travis Etienne, it's because they sat down with Brian Daboll and said, how can you use him? What can it do for us when we give him the ball? What can it do to the defense when we don't give him the ball, but he's there as a threat to be given the ball? It just draw that up, prepare a presentation for us. And again, this is assuming Daboll loves the idea. He might go, I don't need a fast running back. But if he thinks the idea is worth investing time in, to me, that's how you approach it. It doesn't change who you are from last year. It augments what you can do and makes defenses react to your running game in a different way that should ultimately benefit your passing game. That's what I think. And I don't think that's hard to see. I don't think it's that complicated. It does put a certain amount of faith in people who, before Josh Allen blasted off, talked about hand size and the weather a lot. So, there's a lot to sort of sift through and set aside, and I appreciate that and recognize that. I'm having some faith that they would do that and not change dramatically who they are on offense by adding a player who I think could make them even more explosive than they were last year.
Well, I fear that they change it all. Really, not dramatically necessarily, but at all. They were 17th in the league in rush attempts, total attempts. And I have not, I should have by now, broken down exactly why, what is that? Is because the number is sort of higher than I sort of want it to be.
Well,
I think it would be, but they were ahead all the time.
First of all, here's a couple things. I'm not looking at the data, but they ran a lot of plays.
Yep, that's right.
Right. So the split between pass to run might be a truer indicator of what they did and what their philosophy was. You also have however many Allen runs that were not designed runs mixed in there.
102 total. Total 102.
Okay.
Designed and not, I'm saying.
Yeah, right. So I think more of those are scrambles than they are designed. So those are plays that they called passes on that turned out being classified as runs. And so that's not a real, that's not a real true indicator either. You'd have to really go back and go through it and decide for yourself which ones are designed runs and which ones aren't. I think watching the game, it's usually pretty easy to tell. But, I don't know that is split up somewhere by any stat-keeping outlet.
I've got it here. The actually, let me come back to that because I'm looking at the wrong list. They 2 years ago were the 7th pass happiest team in the league. Now that's just early down pass frequency. So first and second down win probability between 15 and 85%, and that's excluding the final 2 minutes of each half. So that was 2 years ago. So I'll hunt for that on last year. But I feel like I've seen charts from last year where if you kind of narrow it down, you take away games they're winning by a big amount, you take away the final minutes of halves, and they're right there at the top with the Chiefs.
Yeah, they
as
were
far as pass frequency as opposed to run. Right.
Right.
They were 11th in attempts, so they weren't like first in attempts. Okay, well, he had more. Allen had more rush attempts last year than Leonard Fournette. If that means anything to you, I mean, Fournette was in a timeshare, but
he was a full-time starter. Yeah, Allen.
Yeah, he was a full-time starter. That's right. More than Le'Veon Bell, way more than Le'Veon Bell. I mean, that really just ended for him once he left the Jets. But so what's a number? Can I ask that? Like Singletary had touches, all right? He had 194 touches. So what's that going to be, like 12 a game, including some number of receptions? Not a big number. Moss was 126, so that's 8 a game. Between them, I've got 20 touches a game from my running backs. What do I want next year? What's the perfect scenario? You want to sort of protect this idea, if I may, with like, well, they don't have to just sort of go all in on Etienne if he's on the team, that he'll just get the ball constantly. So I was 20 touches a game last year were accounted for by my running backs. What's good? Like how do you break that down in sort of a scenario where Etienne is on the roster?
I don't think it has to change that much, really. I mean, I'm consistent on that. He would slot into, I would anticipate, Singletary's role. I think they favored Moss as last year went on, but those guys will have to, they'll have to duke it out, assuming all three get to training camp. Because Singletary, maybe he has done this earnest work and overhauling, and it takes, and maybe that makes a difference for him. But I think overall, it started to look like before Moss got hurt that Moss was taking over. It was subtle. It wasn't like a dramatic shift, but I think he was on the field more as the season progressed. I think they trusted him in pass protection more, and that was a big part of it. You're going to throw the ball a lot with a running back on the field. You want the better blocker on the field, I think. But that for me, just replace Etienne with Singletary, and you proceed. I mean, I just think you have a more dangerous player that touches the ball that many times, and I think that could have everything I just talked about at length for a few minutes just a moment ago. I think could happen. Like that's my plan. I don't know if it's built with tinder sticks or if it's built with bricks, but I like the plan.
Is Singletary on the roster?
Someone isn't. I don't think all three of those guys go, because none of them are special teams guys. I don't think you have room for all three of those guys.
Okay.
And my least favorite part about all this is that you just drafted guys in the third round in back-to-back years, and you're going to be looking at trading one of them, ideally, I guess, for what? You're not getting a third-round pick for them, that's for sure. So that's the biggest, to me, that's the biggest flaw in my planning.
See, I almost hate the point, though, that, like, I just did this in the third round 2 years in a row, so I shouldn't do it this year. Because I don't care that they drafted Devin Singletary in the third round. He does not fit this offense. He doesn't catch the football. He's not a better between the tackles runner than Zach Moss is. He's not a better pass protector than Zach Moss is. And if I need to replace his skill set for that burner running back, then he's gone. I don't care what happens to him. And if Kenneth Gainwell is a third-round pick by the Bills because he's an electric pass catcher and is in open space also, like, I don't know if I want to really worry about like what's happening to my third-string running back.
Well, I agree with that mostly because it doesn't matter anymore. Once they're on the team, it matters in terms of their contract, but that's it. I mean, it doesn't matter where you got them, how you got them. But it isn't good asset management to draft two day two running backs consecutive years and then come back and do it in day one the year after that.
Yeah, that's why I said, like, I'm not so much worried about what happens to Singletary or what I get for Singletary, but I think it looks, it's not the best look. It looks like you maybe don't know what you're doing. like, why did you do that and now you're doing this? But, every year's different, and you find out about your team and what your needs are, and that evolves. And, in my scenario, this has evolved to the extent that when I hear Brandon Beane talk about them lacking a home run hitter there, he could be just smoke screening the living daylights out of me, and maybe he is. But I think you do it because you think you're upgrading and you can afford to do it. Your roster is fully formed enough, and if you give away Devin Singletary for a day 3 pick next year or even this year, fine. Here, keep moving. I'm going to be better in the end with ETN.
Here to me is a much better idea. Keep Devin Singletary, who was cheap anyway. He's not bad. And draft Elijah Moore instead. That's a home run hitter. He's not a running back, which is good, I think. And maybe you do too. I mean, you want to know about the player, right? You want to size up the player. What am I going to do with him? I'm not going to hand the ball off, hardly ever, if ever, to Elijah Moore. But like that is a home run weapon in the offense. I think the point about speed and the Bills' offense is right on. Like that, I agree with that. I just would not want it to be ETN because I think wide receiver does that, and I'll bring up again, it is tonight, so I don't want to worry too much about repeating myself, that as the season wore on, all your wide receivers were injured. And really, how are you supposed to prevent that? You're going to throw the ball like the Bills do. Diggs stayed on the field. Beasley got back on the field. Brown was in and out. Sanders is a guy who's torn his Achilles, and he's late in his career. None of this means those guys will get hurt because it obviously doesn't work like that. But the line is fine between having a deep, awesome passing attack and not. And if you take one of those guys out in a certain matchup, I think you're in trouble. So, and you have Davis. Davis is definitely a part of the conversation. He was not injured as far as I know, but the other guys all were.
Yeah, and none of those guys are real speed.
Right.
So, the receiver idea, I don't hate it really, because really the ETN. I mean, you know this, right? Talk about repeating yourself. Like my line of thinking was I need to get faster, right? So where can I do that? Who plays for me ahead of those receivers? Well, maybe no one, because of what they are. And now having the depth is important. And maybe, you draft someone like Elijah Moore and you find a way to get him on the field just because he's that dangerous and can be that element for you. I just think there's a clearer path to a guy being on the field with that speed and a home run threat in the backfield, because I think the 30th pick in this draft outranks the guys that are already here, whereas at receiver, I wouldn't be as quick to say that. I think you've got Sanders has had a tremendous career. Like, I think he plays. Davis demonstrated his value in just 1 year as a mid-round pick. I think he plays. Diggs plays. Beasley plays. So where is Elijah Moore? Like, it's great that he's fast. It's great that he's an eventual replacement maybe for Cole Beasley. But this year, while my window is wide open here, I'm not sure that it's going to do as much for me as a running back would.
How about these 3 words? Load management. What do you think of that?
Not familiar.
Load management. Week 2, Beasley sits. Week 3, Diggs sits. I know it's sacrilegious, crazy, but you see that in other sports, at least basketball. Baseball. All right, well, I'm excited about tonight, but I'm a little bit sad because this has been fun to talk about every single day for months.
Well, if they draft Travis Etienne, we're going to talk about it every day for years.
Yeah, that's for probably 2 years. That's right.
Until it's time to talk about signing him or not.
Right. Or way sooner than that. Yeah. Okay. 803-0550 if you want to reach us. We're up on the Facebook live stream as well today, as well as being on the radio, so you can see us there. Sal comes back on at 6. The Sabres play tonight. We'll push off Sabres pregame until a little after 6:30. And Brian Koziol will join us then. Joe will be on after the hockey game is over, talking about round 1, which will not be over at that point, unless it's just a super weird year and everybody just goes really fast, but that's not going to happen. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here. The draft is tonight. Thanks for being with us here on WGR.
place to buy a case. And by Fiegel Car and Joyce, your border attorneys.
He's a guy that's most likely of any of the backs in this draft to need a year of seasoning only because he might be the type of player who's so used to hitting those home run plays, like Reggie Bush, like Miles Sanders, like C.J. Spiller, like so many other backs with great speed. They try to out-athlete people, and he has a tendency to want to do that. He did that early in his career, got better at it last year, and I was glad he came back because he showed more maturity. But this is a guy who can catch, he can run. He has the ability to be the man. It's just whether or not he's going to try too hard to be the game breaker on every down and not manage the game the way he should.
That's Matt Waldman with us earlier this week, one of our many super smart draft conversation guys we've looked up, talking about Travis Etienne there. Mike Schopp and the Bulldogs, Sneaky Joe, Sal Capaccio in about half an hour. We're live on Facebook today. You can watch us there. We've already had our Taco Bell trivia question for today. We'll have another one tomorrow. And because of the nature of the question, I've got the Bills' first-round picks up. There was a Wikipedia page just for all their first-round picks. Just looking at them and thinking about each one in terms of how I felt about it. And there's one that stands out for how excited I was for it. Most of these, even Josh Allen, it was more complicated or just like really negative. Allen was just more complicated than negative. I mean, it was just, okay, this is going to be a lift.
I really hope the one that you are most excited about is the one that I hated the most.
Watkins?
I think it is, yeah.
No, but
okay.
They're all cool stories. Like you and I could do just a whole show talking about how we remember each of the last 20 years worth of first-round picks.
Yeah.
Watkins I was at the old McGregor's, and my friend Joe Dunlop was there, and just sort of off in a packed bar. I was sitting at the bar just kind of like I do, sort of to myself. I wanted to sort of just watch it. And a lot of people there were there to celebrate and just party. So the trade happens, 9-4, another first to fourth. The Bills just load up and go draft Sammy Watkins. And I'm like, all right, well, this is bad. This is probably bad. And Joe came over, and I can still see his face. He just sort of leaned in so I could see him, and he just shook his head and smiled, like these guys never get it. And what I came to you with the next day on Watkins was, you know what? I was in a place packed with fans who loved it.
They were happy.
They were happy. And
right.
They didn't want to hear about why it was a bad trade.
Mm-hmm.
So I surprised you the next day.
I guess, yeah. I mean, a little, yeah. I mean, I definitely was the heavy for a while there. I mean, I got smacked around pretty hard because I didn't like it. I said it repeatedly leading up to the draft. Don't do it, because there were rumors, that who did they trade with? The Lions? Cleveland. There were rumors, they were going to do it. Maybe Detroit was another team that was thinking of doing it. That was it. And, they had Matt Stafford, and, okay, well, they got a proven franchise quarterback. I'm working with E.J. Manuel here, and, as much as I want to surround my young quarterback with talent to give him no excuses so I can figure out if he's any good or not, boy, paying extra to do it, forget it. I'm not interested. I didn't want any part of it. So then they did it, and I, stood by that and, got knocked around, whatever it's worth. I mean, it didn't hurt me, but it was, I was fending off a lot of, why are you so negative? Why are you such a jerk? This isn't a good idea. That's why.
Right. When you have a negative opinion about the Bills, it means you're a jerk or just doing it for effect. That's the only two possibilities. Thoughtful take.
Yeah. So who is what's the one? Trey White. Okay.
The only one that they've made, the only pick that they've made in forever that I really just bonded with was trading the pick that was used to draft Patrick Mahomes away.
Yeah. Good job.
Right. I mean, Oliver, Shaq Lawson, whatever, right?
I don't even remember the Shaq Lawson.
Just Oliver's whatever, fine, whatever.
But the Oliver thing was, thank God they didn't move up to 3.
Yes, that's right.
We both have talked about watching that draft, and you went to another place around the corner from work
to
watch that draft, and I was at home because I never go out after work, and we both were just gripped with, please don't do this. Please don't trade up to 3 for a defensive tackle. Until the Jets were whatever, until the Jets made that pick,
it was in a commercial, Bulldog. It was in a commercial, and I also remember the seat. I'm looking up at the TV. The Jets are on the clock. There's the logo, all of it. And am I going to see trade like you did with the Bills and the Chiefs? Am I going to see trade? During the commercial, they would have put it up.
Yep.
And instead it said the pick is in, and I just was so happy and relieved. I just fell back like this. Yep. Thank you, Jets, for not trading with us, not indulging us and trading down to the Bills. So, but yeah, it's just funny. The one that I really loved, I thought, like, the McDermott's always the process, right? That's the process. It's not trading up 3 times in the first round the next year. That's not process. That's just gimme, gimme, gimme. So I feel like process is sort of the word for the other thing. Indianapolis has done a lot of it. But whatever. I overthink. 803-0550 is our number. Brian is next on WGR. Go ahead, Brian.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Great, Brian. Thanks for calling us.
Hey, real quick. What do you think about Aaron Rodgers possibly going to the Patriots? When I heard the news, my heart dropped. Like, that's the first thing I thought of. Just wondering what you guys think about that, and I'll hang up and listen.
Yeah, I don't think it was the first thing I thought of because we were on the air, and it took me until the commercial break, and I tweeted, like, now it's time to start building a fear bunker for Aaron Rodgers going to the Patriots. This doesn't have to mean it won't happen, but most of what's being reported here is that Denver, the Raiders, somewhere out west. So, I'm resting somewhat comfortably with the notion that he won't end up in New England, but that's like a doomsday scenario to me, that he goes to the Patriots. I've said it many, many times. Joe and I have talked about it a lot while Mike was away recently. I just do not want the Patriots to find their way to someone who gives them the luxury that they had for 20 years. Like, I want them to have to work more for it. So, recognizing that they would be giving up a lot of capital to get Aaron Rodgers, but I don't want ready-made Hall of Fame MVP Super Bowl winning quarterback landing in the Patriots' lap. No thanks.
Thanks, Brian. Chad Ochocinco has weighed in on Rodgers. He says he's got sources that say San Francisco is happening. But he also is hearing Pittsburgh, he says. Chad Ochocinco.
Your Twitter buddy.
Yeah. Did that streak end? Did they not? They won, right? The Sabres won a regulation game at the end of March this year. They did. They beat the Flyers. I think the streak ended like 6-0 or something, right? Didn't they have a game like that?
6-1.
6-1.
No, 6-1 ended the streak.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the goalie, Chad Johnson, had the distinction.
Oh, right. Okay. I'm
being the last
struggling to remember the connection. Okay.
Sabre to win a game in regulation in March. It was like 3 years ago, and I tweeted that once in the football. Chad Johnson, noticed it. But
Pittsburgh would be weird.
Yeah.
For Rodgers. Like, Roethlisberger's back there. They already signed him. It'd just be strange.
I know I this is not a point about Rodgers' greatness, but man, if I'm the 49ers, I would tell them to stick it. I want this instead. I want Trey Lance instead, or Fields, even Jones, I guess, but that sounds more like it's unlikely now. We haven't talked much at all about how they've played it. What does that mean that they moved to Trey Lance today? Or did they move, or what happened? Like, the odds certainly moved.
Yeah.
So it seemed like when that happens, somebody's talking in the organization, and people just sort of take notice, and then it builds. So it's probably Lance there, unless they trade the pick to Green Bay. But I would not want that. I feel like this is a great moment for a franchise. And, I was going to say this before we ran out of time. You had that list, the Mike Clay list of all the quarterbacks picked in the first round since 2010, and how so many of them have been moved out.
Yeah, like 23 of them never, like, it just aren't there anymore. 11 of them are, and that doesn't begin until Watson, Mahomes, that draft. Those are the first guys that are still with a team that drafted them in the first round.
Now, The recent ones, though, some of them anyway, you would not expect that for. Allen, for instance. Mahomes, of course.
Right.
Mayfield, Jackson. Like,
yep, those look pretty comfortable.
Right?
Point. Yes.
And the position is different than it was back even when Goff was drafted and Wentz. Like, those guys are very different quarterbacks than these guys.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jackson rushes for 1,000 yards every year. Allen has 25 rushing touchdowns in 3 years, some number like that. Like, it's different. And that's what Fields and Lance seem to represent, if not Lawrence as well.
Lawrence is an excellent runner. Yeah.
Right? So I don't want to make a correlation between rushing and long-term success, but the league is looking for, I think they're looking for and expecting a different type of quarterback than that.
I think that's the point to make there. I think I included this in a quote tweet with that list. I think the financial structure of the contracts plays a part in that too.
Right.
Because you're no longer, like, that list extends far enough back to Sam Bradford, right? 2010. I don't know what year he is. I don't have the list in front of me right now, but he's on that list, right? And maybe that's the last year that the guaranteed money was so huge for quarterbacks. So, what does that mean? It's a bigger commitment. It's harder to get out from under once you've signed him to that first contract. Forget about a second contract. The first one is penal to get out of, within the first few years of it. So you rarely see teams do it. But now that the structure of the contracts has changed and it's more moderate, you can afford to, draft E.J. Manuel and go, by game 4 of his second year, you know what, this isn't working, we don't care, we're done. And he's on the team because, you can afford to have him as a backup because it doesn't cost that much. And then you just go back to the bar and order another drink. I'm going to try another guy. And you keep doing that. So it makes it a little more convenient to do it. The second contract is the real, that's the real nutcracker.
We'll take a break here. Sal coming up. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog, the NFL Draft, round 1 tonight. And follow all the action here on WGR.
You're listening to Schopp and the Bulldog live
having to take that step into the real world, so to speak. Buffalo is always going to be that place. And I always felt like I kind of owed something to Buffalo in a way. Like, I always wanted to do right by the fans. And, there's a big inspiration behind a lot of the work in the community and the charity, and giving my time and giving attention, and, sometimes giving opportunity or money to different charities would just make the community rise up just a little bit. That just made me feel better about what I was getting from Buffalo.
Ryan Miller, salute to him as he heads into retirement after this season with Anaheim. I mean, his voice and his being so emotional today are just are both familiar. Like, he was often emotional when we would hear him. Not always. Sometimes he was pretty fierce, but he was always engaged when he was in a conversation with him, just privately on the air. He always seemed to be really wanting to give you his best answer. And for sports, that's very rare.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty high on the list of things that I always appreciated about him. Was that, I still remember, I'll bet you do too. And it's come up a lot. Like, we're talking about Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, and is he ready in development, and, that sort of thing. And it gets referenced. It even got referenced when Luukkonen made his debut last Friday. To me, like, I remember Ryan Miller standing in the locker room in tears because a game had gone so poorly very early in his career. Kind of like a scenario like Luukkonen's in now. Like, Miller was still years away from being a regular here, but he came up and played, and it didn't go well, and that hit him hard. And we spoke to him maybe a year after that, and he had started doing work with a mental skills coach, a sports psychologist, and he went deep talking with us on the air about that process, and I've never forgotten that.
Miller, everybody loved him in those 06-07 seasons. He was never like my favorite. I always liked him, but I was more into Briere or Campbell, like different guys on the team sort of appealed to me differently. But when I think about that team and its close losses, I think about Miller first. Like, I see Miller, it's Alfredson's goal, or it's Carolina, the losses in those conference finals. Like, it's sort of, I feel like what I look at when I try to picture it is Ryan Miller, like, on the ice after a goal, or just sort of his face showing that sadness. Like, he's the player. I think, like, he was those teams in a way, being the goalie and really a star, the Olympics and everything else that came for him. But really just like a genuine guy who really, and he says it here, and there's no questioning it. His love for the city, I mean, still resonates. And it was cool to see all the former teammates of his jump on that call today. We saw that on Twitter, that there were a bunch of Pominville. See Pominville's beard?
Holy cow.
Right, Pominville's beard. Gaustad was on that call. I don't know who else.
Marty was on it, I think.
Come on with that beard. How can you live like that? Look at you.
Hey.
How do you do it?
Mine's nothing now. Mine was like down to here before I went and saw my man Oral Roberts over at Colvin Mill.
Oral Roberts.
It was out of hand. So this is nothing now. Pominville's got me beat. Pominville, I saw that and I thought, why is Joe Thornton on the Ryan Miller conference call when I saw the beard? It was Thornton.
Not a guy I would have ever took for a beard guy, Jason Pominville, at all.
Yeah.
Like Gaustad, yes. I could see Gaustad doing it. Maybe it's because of the type of player he was. I don't know.
So this beard we're watching you right now, I mean, that's sort of tight.
This is, I got it worked on April 12th, right before we went out west.
Because I'm not trying to compete with you. I wouldn't, but I went to see my barber, Texas Southern, the other day, and I feel like mine looks a little bit tight as well. It's hard to see yours that way. Sal Capaccio coming up next. We will have more of our draft preview coverage here. I want to do one thing before that, though, Joe. Do you know what it is?
I think I know.
Luke Bryan concert tickets.
Close, but no. No, I want to tell everybody that your local Taco Bell and KFC are hiring for all positions in the Buffalo area. Great careers are available for team member and management positions. Be part of a dynamic brand offering competitive pay and a flexible work schedule. Stop in and ask for an application or apply online, tbjobs.bbgnorth.com, or replace TB with KFC. Same address. Text BBG-TB or KFC to 85,000 for applicants. Message for applicants. Message and data rates may apply. Start with us. Stay with us. Taco Bell. Thanks for their support today. All right, Sal, next. We are now just over 2 hours away from the start of round one. Trevor Lawrence to Jacksonville, the expectation. We'll get into it. And also the Aaron Rodgers story once again with Sal after this. This is WGR.
Protect your privacy online for free with Duck.
Sal Capaccio, Sal Capaccio, Sal Capaccio, Sal Capaccio, Sal Capaccio, Sal Capaccio.
On WGR.
Welcome back and happy giraffe night. Round 1, 2 hours away. What's so funny? His hat?
Joe's got the hat back.
The taco hat.
Kind of looks like a cowboy hat from the side.
Yeah, it does. Finishing strong. All right.
A cowboy hat with lots of meat and cheese and
lettuce,
goodness.
tomatoes.
How can you not be hungry looking at Joe's Taco Bell hat? The pepper that I've got, I'm not sure how appetizing that is. You can't even see it. It's a crinkly,
Just a pepper.
It's a crinkly pepper. Sal, did they send you a pepper?
No, I don't have a pepper.
No, I don't have a pepper.
Just the hat.
Just the hat.
The mug. I got a nice mug.
Nice mug.
Nice mug right here.
Nice mug right here.
Oh, you got a mug. Oh, yeah. All right.
Yeah, nice one. Nice.
It's
Let's
a
do
hat,
a mug.
but it doesn't
Oh,
fit.
you got a pepper hat. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Now it's happening.
It's too small.
I
right?
can't. I literally
Oh,
cannot get it out of my head. Like,
Bulldog,
no.
you and I got these caps. They got the hats. We got the caps. These
Yeah,
things.
we do. Yeah.
Bulldog and I have a few just sort of weird similarities. We both went to see Captain and Tennille for our first concert. We both saw our first baseball game in Riverfront Stadium in Cincinnati, and we both have giant heads.
So my middle name is Antonino, and when I was growing up, people would say Captain Antonino, and I thought they were calling me like Captain Antonino. I have no idea.
All right. To be fair, the Captain and Tennille were opening for America at the C&E bandstand during the Canadian National Exhibition. So we did not exactly go to see. Well, we probably did. My parents were probably more excited to take their 3 kids to see Captain and Tennille than they were America, actually.
Yeah, I don't know what my story is there. I know I was very young, and it was not my I didn't organize the plan or anything. I was probably 9, so I don't think it had a lot to do with my being there. We have not talked about, and I don't know. I probably shouldn't lead with this. The Rodgers story is massive. The Bills here were 2 hours away. We have not talked about Atlanta at all, and I want to make sure we do. So it's almost definitely 3 quarterbacks. I don't know what happens if the 49ers pull off something for Aaron Rodgers. Maybe they do, but that's sort of the given here. And then Atlanta, and it sounds like Atlanta is Kyle Pitts. Do you guys like that for them?
Yes. Yes, I do. I think
I like it as the prediction, and I like it as the pick. Yes.
Yeah, as long as they're committed to Matt Ryan, to me, they're not going to trade out. They're not going to take a different quarterback. I think it just makes all the sense in the world to take Kyle Pitts and try to keep going with that offense, and that includes Julio Jones. The Julio Jones trade sounds like the timing on that is weird to me, that idea, because it sort of flies in the face of let's try one more time, keep the band together, and go on one last tour. But I like Pitts, if they keep everything together there. If they move Julio Jones, I'm not sure I like any of it. The Matt Ryan redo and then trying to keep going, I don't think it makes sense if you trade away the sort of kingpin guy and all that.
Right. It might have been one of your smokescreens, the Julio thing, because we could draft a quarterback here, so we're prepared to rebuild. That's probably a smart idea.
Well, I was listening to that podcast that McShay was on with Ryan Russillo, and McShay said, I believe Kyle Pitts could be a Hall of Fame tight end. Now, that is incredible praise to put on somebody, but if that's what you feel, like if there's a GM, if the Falcons feel like that's how good he can be, then you take him. I mean, if you have a chance to put a Hall of Famer on your team, and he is a matchup nightmare, obviously, the way the game is played right now. But I do believe that there are going to be teams super interested in that pick, but I ultimately have them, even if I would do trades in my mock, which I didn't, I don't think I would have them trading out. I think they're going to take Kyle Pitts.
Sal, what do you think of the Jets' choice if it's Wilson?
I don't know. I want to see how it goes. I'm not super enamored with the guy. I have some questions about level of competition. We talk about Mac Jones in the he's not the athlete as Fields or Lance are. I mean, is Wilson really? I mean, Wilson isn't a great athlete. He could move a little bit. He's more of a pocket passer, more of a traditional QB. He can move around. Like I said, it's not like he's not Joe Flacco back there.
He's Herbert-esque.
Herbert.
Yeah, so I don't.
Herbert-esque.
Yeah. So, yeah, I want to see how it goes. I just think it's the Jets, and they haven't really done anything right over the last long time, but now they have this new regime in place, and Robert Saleh, we'll see what kind of a coach he is. They have to overhaul a lot. There's still players away. This one player, this quarterback, to me, he is not going to simply walk in to the Jets locker room and on the field and change their fortunes to be a playoff team, especially in this division. So I still think they're the number 4 team in the division. I'm willing to give it a chance and see how it works out. But I'm not wowed with the guy. I mean, sure, he could go on to a great career, but I'm not sitting here going, wow, I can't believe Zach Wilson, Bills have to deal with him now for 4 years.
Yeah, it is tough. Like when you're that guy coming into this draft, and you're the second quarterback after a guy that has been kind of the consensus number 1 pick since he showed up at Clemson, right? I mean, you've got a body of work with Trevor Lawrence, is all I'm going a ways to say here, and Zach Wilson. Like, I don't know, forgive me if I'm not doing my homework, but that was not a name I really heard before this fall. So, there's a little bit of a sort of, did you do the work on him and dig into him? You say the same thing about Trey Lance, of course, from a even smaller, program there at North Dakota State. So, I'm willing to believe what I've read about him and the fact that people that I trust so quickly got to, he's got to be the second guy. Like I'm trusting that, but it doesn't have to work, I mean, the Jets, I mean, eventually you figure they'll get it right. And I do like this coach they hired, even though he's a defensive guy, not an offensive guy. There's kind of a McDermott stink coming off him in a good way. I mean, Robert Saleh.
Stink.
So a good stink. So I think maybe they got that right. We'll see if, the quarterback pans out. Obviously Sean McDermott has done a lot of things right here, but if Josh Allen hadn't progressed the way he has, I don't know how much it would all be worth. So Robert Saleh is facing the same thing. They gotta get a kid that's going to do the work and it's going to translate, and he's going to, end up being, a franchise QB for them.
A good stink is called a musk, by the way.
Ah.
I don't think he's a consensus number 2. I mean, maybe, but if all of the teams who needed QBs lined up, would they all have him number 2? I think they'd all have Lawrence number 1. I'm not convinced in that. I think that either for what the Jets want, they really like him. Maybe a majority of teams would have him number 2. They really, liked his pro day, and they'll give him some time. There's not a win now thing going on in New York, obviously, with the new coach. So yeah, we'll see. I'll give him a chance. One thing I will tell you though is I do question the level of competition, but I don't think that you can't overcome that. Obviously, we have the example right here in our own backyard with Josh Allen, but I think I probably go back to Steve McNair for this, which is when he was so questioned about the level of competition he played at Elkhorn State, but he came in the league and he played well. And I think that kind of made me and, at that age of my life, looking at the NFL draft go, yeah, well, it can happen. If you're good enough, you're good enough.
Right.
Yeah, and now, of course, quarterbacks almost always go right on the field after being drafted. Not always. Patrick Mahomes was not that, and McNair was not. That's a long time ago. Sal Capaccio with us, Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here on WGR. The draft starts at 8 o'clock. We've got a hockey game tonight. We're going to have Sabres pregame for you at about 6:35. Brian Koziol will move in then. Joe will be on after the hockey game to continue with coverage of the draft in round 1. The Bills will probably not have picked by that point. Sal, when you were on with us earlier, I asked you I gave you 3 names. Give me 3 names, and your goal here is to nail one of them as the Bills selection here in the first round. And if I was right in writing these down, Azeez Ojulari was the first name you gave. Is that right?
No,
Jalen
Phillips.
Jalen Phillips, Rousseau?
No, Greg Newsome.
Wow.
You want me to say the third one? The third one was ETN. Yeah, you got that one.
Jalen.
I had Jalen Phillips and Greg Newsome as the other 2.
So sorry.
Now, your mock you did last night, you wrote quite a bit about Jalen Phillips because he ended up just the way that you did the process, and I trust your intentions were pure. You didn't rig the thing so that Jalen Phillips ended up being there at 30 for the Bills. But for folks who have been listening to us for months talk about ETN and maybe some cornerbacks, what can you tell us about Jalen Phillips, Sal?
This is a super interesting, very polarizing player. Some teams, as I said earlier, are going to have him maybe top 10 on their board. I mean, that's how good he can be. Some teams might have him completely off their board. The wild card is what we don't know. We don't know what the Bills would think. Here's why. Let me tell you about this kid a little bit. You know, you hear things like, and we talked about this. Remember, I would even come out with you guys and go, "Oh, come on, the guy walked away from football. He's had concussions. Like, that's not a guy the Bills want, right?" We've said that. I dug a little bit more into his story and really learned about him and came away going, I think the Bills could be interested in this guy. He was like the number 1 high school recruit in the nation in 2017. Goes to UCLA. While he's there, he suffers multiple concussions. He also gets hit. He's riding a scooter, gets hit by a car, and has to have wrist surgery. I think 2 surgeries on the wrist to repair it. He had a couple of ankle injuries as well. At the end of the 2018 season, he winds up saying, because of the concussions and injuries, medically walking away from the game. He did not walk away from the game because he just didn't like football anymore, or he wasn't passionate about football anymore. He had these concussions, he had these injuries, he walked away from the game, and from there, he said, I want to do something I'm passionate about. I think there's a confusion here, and from my reading all about this kid, I've read plenty of articles recently about him, he didn't say, I want to go into music, I don't like football. His grandfather is currently the Dean of Conservatory of Music at Lynn University in Boca Raton, Florida. He is also a world-renowned pianist and conductor. His father is a trumpet player. Mom's a cello player. The kid himself is a classical pianist. He went, after he left football, he said, this is something I'm passionate about. I'm going to go into music. He went to a big-time school for music in Florida. While he's there, the opposite actually happened. He loved football so much, he said, I really want to play again. Like, I shouldn't have walked away. I know why I did, but I really want to do this. Like, I'm passionate about football as much as I love music. Transfers to the University of Miami, has to sit out a year, and through last year, A, he stayed completely healthy. B, he was totally productive. 15 and a half tackles for loss, 8 sacks. And then he goes out and has a great pro day, and he's named second team All-American and All-ACC. So the question is, the concussions that were, in the past, the injuries, I'm not worried about the injuries. The wrist, he had a couple ankle injuries. Injuries happen. Wasn't on the field for the wrist. The Bills have a really good training program. I think they would say, look, we can deal with the injuries. The question is the concussions. And the reason why it put me over the top, guys, was Mitch Morse had multiple concussions with the Kansas City Chiefs. They signed him and made him the highest paid center in the league. I do not think that's going to be a barrier.
Lynn University, by the way, is my stylist's name. Throw that in.
So as a player, Sal, like what are the measurables here? If you said it in there and I missed it, yep. I apologize.
I didn't.
But doing a little multitasking. But like what are we talking about as a scheme fit and just as an athlete? What do we got?
So, right, thank you, because, I go through the kid, why I think they would like the kid and get past all the stuff, because the stuff is the stuff with him, that's what's keeping him down. But as a football player, guys, 6'5", 258, he can play any position, really, on the edge or at linebacker on the outside. He can even kick inside a little bit. He can put his hand on the ground as a defensive end. He can stand up and play linebacker. He can even kick inside, like I said. He's good against the run. He's a good pass rusher. He really is like a top 10 type of talent coming out of college football. And he has been since he's been a kid, since he went in from high school. But the question is what people are going to think about the medical. And like I said earlier, I don't even if you feel he's that great of a player, there are so many other positions that I think go before edge that starts to push him down the board anyway.
Sal Capaccio with us, Mike Schopp and the Bulldogs, Sneaky Joe. The draft is coming up tonight.
Well, I'll tell you what I like hearing about that prospect. I said it earlier when you were on with us today, Sal, that I worry about edge that low in the draft because guys that have the traits to be successful at that position usually are chosen earlier than 30, but you do have a unique set of circumstances here. You mentioned it, the injury history, the transfer, the leaving football for an interest in music, then coming back to football. And, I would expect that there are teams that would be scared off of that, of him because of that. And even before talking to you about him specifically, I probably would have told you I think the Bills might be a team that would be scared off of that, right? Does the guy eat, sleep, drink football? Does he love it so much? Is he going to fit in here in that way? I think that's a valid question to ask about them, but because of, I think how their approach to this culture and the fit and all that. But if they have intelligence on the kid that they trust that he is committed to football, then I think you might be able to get there. Like, they might recognize value in him having those traits, but being ignored and passed over because of the other stuff, and they might just look at that as noise. I would commend them for that, because if the guy can play, the guy can play.
That's right. And I've been one to think the same thing about the kid until, again, I kind of delved into his story a little bit more and just wanted to find out. And, I just think he has an interesting story, but he is a really good football player. You're right about that. And let me make it clear. He could be off the Bills board. I have no idea, right? I mean, but I think it's all or nothing. I think he's either off their board or really high on their board. Like, I don't think there's any in between. But if that's the case, it might be the case with other teams. The question is, do teams around 15 or 16 go, that's just too high of a pick to burn if we do take him and it doesn't work out? At 30, I think you can maybe afford to take that swing for a spot that could come right on this team. If the Bills took Jalen Phillips at 30, I will tell you this, they would not get a more impactful player other than maybe Travis Etienne, depending on how, they use him because of all the things we've talked about. But I really believe that. I think edge rusher is very possible where they are. The thing about Phillips is, he can play all this. Ojulari reminds me a lot of the way they used Lorenzo Alexander. I think he might be better suited with his standing up, but he can certainly play with his hand down. But he can kind of be that guy that you can move around, pass rusher, good against the run. And then Kwity Paye is, you talk about scheme fit for the Bills, like Kwity Paye is a 4-3 defensive end. That's all he is. He is not standing up. He's not covering anybody. He's putting his hand down. He's going to be a little bit tighter to the alignment sometimes, where he's fine setting the edge. And I did not see anybody as good as this kid at that position, chasing plays down sideline to sideline. So I think any of those guys could be in play if they fall.
Sal, are we going to see an Aaron Rodgers trade tonight?
I don't think so. I mean, I think for this thing to come out now, I think there's probably a lot of interest at play here. Maybe like we talked about earlier, you guys did. Why does it come out today? Well, because Aaron Rodgers probably says, hey, you know what? Now's the time. Move me. Making some noise. Maybe he's doing it because he wants the Packers to give him some help in this draft, for all we know, right? Hey, you haven't taken care of me. I just think if it was to the point of, like, critical point, if we're at DEFCON 1, I think we would have heard about these things a lot sooner. Even though we've heard rumblings, we haven't heard this type of report on Aaron Rodgers.
Isn't that really, like, I think we're all, to different extents, maybe or maybe not, just sort of distracted almost by that aspect of these things. Like, how did this play out this way? How did we get to the day of the draft and hear Adam Schefter and then everybody else, right, almost as a chorus, tell us details about how for months Green Bay's coach and GM and everybody have been flying to him to try to talk him into staying? Like, Russell Wilson went on Dan Patrick and said, yeah, I'm tired of getting hit. And then for 2 months we talked about Russell Wilson wanting out of Seattle, and Seattle did nothing. And, like, just how, I don't know. Like, I don't know the answers to these things, and you guys probably don't either. But it's just amazing how some of this stuff goes. And somehow Rodgers, of all people, he just won the MVP. Last year, by Friday, we talked about, are his days numbered? Because they drafted Jordan Love, who, by the way, is the only skill position player they have drafted in the first round since Rodgers became the starting quarterback of that team, which,
it's amazing.
Might explain his grievance.
I think I've given you guys this stat before. I'm not sure. If you go back to 2017, that's 17, 18, 19, 4 drafts. You go 4 drafts. Every quarterback taken in the first, second, or third round for the last 4 drafts, only 2 of them have not taken a snap in the NFL in a regular season game yet. Can you name them?
Well, Jordan Love is one.
That is one. That's correct.
There's another quarterback picked in the last 4 years in the first round?
First, second, or third.
Oh.
That has not taken a snap. And the reason I say it is because he plays for the Bills. It's Davis Webb. Davis Webb and Jordan Love are the only quarterbacks in the last 4 years taken in the top 3 rounds who have yet to take a snap in a regular season game.
Well, I think I would have to, if it's a bet, I'm not going to bet on a Rodgers trade, but you have this San Francisco rumor that started this morning, how they tried to get him with the 3rd pick. And, like, you don't even know what to think of that. Like, why they just traded for that pick. Would they really do that? Is that something that has any legs? Like, Did they have some reason to think that Aaron Rodgers could be traded? And I guess by the afternoon, that answer was yes. So if I'm San Francisco, I'm just making that draft pick. I think I've got that's why I made the trade, but that's not even why. I've got super exciting options there. It's probably Lance at this point. You've got a super athlete, all kinds of potential, and a quarterback who's great at getting the most out of them. So that's good enough for me. I don't need Rodgers at 37. Some teams, okay, depending on the cost, but I don't want it for San Francisco.
No, I mean, who knows what's at play here, but I do get the feeling, too, I think to myself, okay, they made this move, and then all of a sudden they want to trade out of the move, but it is for Aaron Rodgers, I guess, if you want to do it. So it does make sense.
New information.
Right. I still don't think they have enough. I mean, I don't know. You said 2 hours ago with us, Sal, like players, maybe that's how they get it done, the third pick and players. I just think having traded away 2 first-round picks for next year and the year after to get to 3 in the first place makes it tough. I mean, I might be overrating Rodgers' value, but it would surprise me if Green Bay, maybe they won't have a choice, because if Rodgers has a gun to their head, they may have to settle for the third pick and a couple of players off of that roster. But boy, I'm betting on a trade. Like I know it has to happen here, I would think, before round 1 starts or early today, because some team is going to, Carolina's going to trade for him, or Denver, or the Raiders, anybody's going to trade for him. San Francisco, they're going to need to know what they're doing. But I feel like it escalated quickly, and I'm respecting. Usually I'm Mr. You know me, I'm Mr. Smokescreen, but this to me sounds real. So we're going to get done here and hand off to Brian Koziel for Sabres pregame. I'm going to go downstairs and sit in front of my TV expecting Aaron Rodgers to get traded by 8 o'clock.
Wow.
Well, that'd be interesting. And the other thing interesting is if he doesn't, who do they pick at 29? They pick right before the Bills. Like, do they give him help? Do they go defense again? You know, I don't know. I think I had him even going defense in my thing. The safety. Who's the safety? Mayrig out of TCU. I have him going there because he can play a lot of different positions. But to your point, Mike, about skill position players and do they give him some help? Before I go, I do. You asked me to call my shot, and I went through Phillips. We know about ETN. I just want to tell you about Greg Newsome real quick, just in case, because I do think he would be in play for the Bills. Cornerback out of Northwestern. If you think about scheme fit, we talk about that a lot. He'd be a perfect scheme fit for the Bills. He's a really good zone corner. He can play man-to-man. He can play inside and outside. And the Bills love their versatility. The only question is the takeaways. He only had 1 interception in 3 years, but a ton of pass breakups, getting to the ball, just maybe actually securing the ball is the only issue there. He can tackle. He's super fast. We're in a great 40. I don't remember the exact number. I think sub 4.4 at the combine. I think you might have to move up a little bit to get him, because with Farley's situation, maybe Newsome takes him over as one of the earlier corners drafted. But I think he would be a really good fit for the Bills that I would not be surprised if they found their way to tonight.
All right, you know what? It's not a question for you, and we do have 5 more minutes if you are free for that long. But I will call a shot. Earlier, I was looking back at Bills' first-round pick history and realizing I've almost never been happy with what they did. Sometimes, there are a lot of just okay years. And the one time I was really excited for them was when they traded down for Trey White. Not because I'd watched 1 second of film on Trey White, but it's such a smart move. New coach, let's just sort of take it easy. Wouldn't you know it, Patrick Mahomes is on the other end of that trade, and Allen's great, so whatever, but it's kind of haunting in that way. So I'm just going to, you go on show, Sal, and you have to decide, you check with the people. Do you want me to try to predict what they'll do, or do you want me to tell you what I would do?
Right.
And so I'm just going to root for me tonight and predict, because this is just sitting there for them. You trade down from 30 and get maybe a third or even a second, depending on who you're working with, to a team that wants the 6th quarterback. Kellen Mond, whoever that is. Doesn't even have to be a quarterback, but a team that wants that extra year of potential control in the player. The Bills really are not in any sort of urgent situation here. They have a very nice roster. Let's go start playing the odds a little bit. We don't need to be trading up and sort of pushing all our chips in on, even a linebacker. Let's just not look at it that way. If I'm Bean, I want to get a trade down under my belt here. He's never done one. So I can't name you the team. but I'd like to see that happen, and that's what I'll go with.
Well, I like it a lot, Mike. I would not be opposed to it. I'd like to see them get picks next year instead of this year.
Fine.
Next year's picks are going to be very valuable because there's more information available, and at some point they're going to have to start replacing people, and maybe not this year might not be the year to make the roster as rookies, and you have to have less picks, so why not get more next year?
Yeah.
And I also wrote about guys they could target if they traded down to 35, 37. Eric Stokes, cornerback out of Georgia, I think fits him perfectly, but I don't think he quite measures up to a 30th pick, but maybe a little bit later. You guys know I love Melifonwu of Syracuse. We've talked about him. I think that would be a really good target there, Mike, if they traded down to that spot. And then the 2 offensive linemen for Alabama, Dickerson, who would be an easy first-round pick if it wasn't for all the injuries. He can play all 5 spots, and Creed Humphrey. They're going to have to, revamp the interior at some point, especially, thinking about Mitch Morse's future. So I think those could be guys you could move down for and still get.
Bulldog, you want to?
I think the biggest argument against moving down is the point Sal just made. Like, do they have room for extra draft picks to make this team this year? I mean, it's great if you get extra seconds or thirds, but how you'd want to make sure you're going to have room for those guys, and it just might push guys later in the draft out, and I just don't know that they have room for all that. Of course, those players would be better prospects if you got extra seconds or thirds as opposed to 5th and 6th and 7th. So I recognize that, but I'm not sure extra picks is where they need to be. I love the ETN idea. I mean, I've been just banging the drum here constantly. That's what I want them to do. I've never really had any great sense that they would do it. That they like the idea. I think Bean has navigated this offseason expertly by laying down paths to lots of different positions, and ETN certainly is one, with him talking about how they don't have a home run hitter in the backfield on their team, but that to me just could be smoke. So, I hope they pick ETN. I think there's a fit there. But I'll tell you what, Sal did a good job. Like, I felt like I was on a car lot being convinced about a vehicle when you were talking. Sorry if this is sloppy and not complimentary to Jalen Phillips, but you did a great job laying out Jalen Phillips, the pros on him. And like, if they ended up there, I wouldn't be really upset. But ETN is who I want them to pick and who I hope they pick. I can't really say with authority, though, that I think they will do it.
Joe, 1 minute. Who do you like?
I like wide receiver, and I think they will pick a wide receiver. I think McDermott's comment about wide receivers are fastball, Bean's comment about long-term over short-term, I think they recognize that they have an aged wide receiver core, and they will pick a receiver at 30, and that's exactly what I would do.
You've studied it. Who's the right one?
I think Elijah Moore is going to go earlier than 30.
Yep.
I think he's gone. I think Bateman is gone. I like Rondell Moore. I'm concerned that they will not like the medical history with him. So I think Kadarius Toney actually makes the most sense for them. He's a speedy receiver. He's got position flexibility that Moore doesn't have. So I would go Rondell Moore, but I think Toney will be their guy.
That's a player there's a lot of conflict about in terms of what his potential is. Collinsworth loves him, but a lot of people are really scared of Toney. Florida?
Yeah, Florida.
Yeah, so many receivers there. Terrace Marshall, who's got an injury thing that's not even a new thing, but people are worried about that. That might be more of a Baltimore fit. I'd love for you to be right. All right. Great day. Thanks, everybody. Sal, cool. We'll see you tomorrow. And, of course, have a lot to talk about after round 1 tonight. So thank you.
Yeah, enjoy it, guys.
Yeah, we are going to pass it off to Brian with Sabres pregame. We, did this half an hour on the draft, but we got to get it in. And we want to get it in. So Brian will be next. Paul William Belt's pregame show, Sabres and Bruins tonight. Joe and Nate Geary, thank you. I didn't realize Nate was on, but they're together after the hockey game tonight with coverage of round 1. We will be on tomorrow, of course, and then I don't really mean of course. Like, it's always a privilege. If they want us, we'll do it. I think, right, Bulldog, tomorrow?
Yeah. I'm planning to be here, but, if something changes. Yeah.
And we'll also be on the Facebook stream like today for a couple of hours as well prior to day 2 of the draft. Thanks, everybody. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog with Sneaky Joe. This is WGR.